Hello, everyone, and welcome to the seventh episode of the Start to Lead podcast. Today, we'll be talking on an important topic very relevant to the current situation. Essentially, how should students in final year or even pre-final year of college handle the uncertain times, especially with respect to job offers, higher studies, and or even idea about starting a company, etc. And our guest for today is Rajesh Mupalla, who's a senior director of engineering at Avalara, and he was previously the co-founder of Index. Or in other words, Rajesh is my boss and also my mentor. And so Rajesh is an alumnus of the Army Institute of Technology, Pune, and he recently gave a talk on this topic to the students from AIT. So when he mentioned this to me, I was very interested to see if he can come and talk to this podcast as well, so that he can also reach out to a bit more folks. I'm sure the podcast is still growing in viewership, but at least if a few more students are able to listen to this, I think that is a good enough goal for both of us. And I've also in the last few days been able to collect some questions from students, and I'll be asking those questions to Rajesh as well. Hey, welcome, Rajesh.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks. So you have done some research around the economic situation and how jobs are getting affected across multiple industries and also more specifically in the software industry, right? So how do you see the current situation playing out in terms of the economy and the job market, especially for new graduates who are planning to start the career?
Yeah, I think one word I can use to explain the current situation would be the word uncertain. I mean, I'm not an expert in this. Whatever I'm going to talk about is based on whatever I've read, spoken to folks working in different companies, some people running startups. So yeah, so what I've seen is definitely industries have been affected. There are certain industries more than the others. For example, hospitality, tourism, restaurants, aviation. Uh, so I mean, you must be hearing about this as well, right? Airbnb, they recently laid off about 25% of their workforce. Uber recently laid off about 3,700 people, and I was just talking to a few people in IIT Hyderabad who I'd met them for placements, but looks like the company that they got an offer has also taken back the offer. So of course, I mean, these are tough times. Certain industries have been affected. Not only this, other industries as well. Because let's say if you're working in a services company who are actually providing solutions to these industries, they would also have been affected. An example is I was talking to somebody in TCS, and that person works in the hospitality industry for one of the biggest hotel chains. His team size was about 250, and within a month, that became 50, and the other 200 people went to bench. And the reason they had the 50 people was because they stopped all new projects and only maintenance projects were being taken. Now, what this meant is that the 200 people who went to bench, some of them were absorbed in other industries where some new stuff was happening, but a lot of them are still on the bench, right? So now this will play out differently in different industries, different companies. So depending upon which company you're placed, I can't say for sure what will happen, but what you could do would be understand how does that company make money, how much cash reserves they have. Like for example, if you got an offer in a startup, right, you could talk about you could think about two things. There's something called burn rate, and there is something called runway, right? So assume that a startup has certain cash reserves, and they could also be getting money via bookings and subscriptions, right? Now burn rate is how much money they're spending on a monthly basis, and a lot of this money would be on salaries or let's say running systems. Now the runway would be how long can they actually sustain with that burn rate? How many months or years can they sustain with that burn rate, right? So now everybody, a lot of the startup founders, I mean, they're thinking about, okay, how do I reduce my burn rate so that I get more runway? So those calculations are happening. So they are putting off some new projects, or the executives are taking pay cut, or they are holding off on offers, right? So this is something that's definitely playing out, and you might have to do your own research in your specific industry, what company you've got offers in, to see how would things play out. And a lot of companies are also playing the wait and watch game. some companies are transparent; they're letting folks know right away that okay, we're not hiring or we're not going to honor the offers. But some companies are still in the wait and watch mode. So that's you know, and I mean, that's what my understanding of the situation is. Things will be tough for you guys entering into the job market.
Right. So one thing that I know that you entered the job market or started your career during the 2001 time, right? And also I myself also entered during the 2008 2009 recession time.
Right.
So how would you compare those two to what is happening now? In a lot of ways, it looks to be way worse, but there also seems to be like a lot of things that are a lot of there is a lot of opportunity as well, especially around software with online. A lot of folks moving to online, a lot of automation and all that. So how would you compare those two? Is it as bad as the previous ones, or is it better? Is it the same? It's all going to depend and vary a lot.
Yeah. So before I answer that question, right, couple of things I want to talk about. First is uh, do we all know when this will end, right? To answer your question, is it better or worse than, let's say, the 2001 recession or the 2008 2009 recession? None of us know the answer, because there is also a lot of uncertainty on when this will end, right? So the economy. So there was this article that I was reading from Salesforce, which they sent to their customers, where they are saying that it will take about 18 months to 3 years for the economy to recover, right? So, and the way that the economy will recover might be through different ways. It could be a V-shaped recovery where the economy will go down and then it will suddenly bounce back up, or it could be a U-shaped where it will slowly go down and then it will stay at the bottom for a while and then pick up, right? So, and there are a couple of other such scenarios as well. And most likely people are saying it's the U, but nobody knows, how long will this flat situation last, right? And one advice, before I talk about, my experience would be to tell everybody that, we have to accept this reality. This is something that we don't have any control on. This is something, that is happening. I mean, nobody else, even the biggest, the wealthiest countries or the most strongest countries are also, they also don't know how to handle it. Of course, everybody is trying, but nobody knows when this will end, right? So the first thing is, let's accept this reality. And before I talk about how I handled some of these a similar situation in my career, a couple of times, right? So let me talk about where I was during the 2001-2002 recession, right? So I, as Manoj said, graduated from Army Institute of Technology, Pune. I was in my final year in 2001. So at that time, the bubble that burst in 2000, the dot-com bubble, had not reached India, in the sense that the recession, we were not affected. And early 2001, I think March, April is when I got placed. I got placed in a pretty good multinational company with a 7-figure salary, and I was pretty happy. Thought, okay, this is a good outcome of the effort that I put in my engineering. But then things started to change suddenly. Within 2 months, we realized that my seniors who were offered in the same company, their offers were either withdrawn or they were postponed indefinitely. And a few months later, 9/11 happened. So what we were seeing is the recession that had stuck in the US had started to affect India. And suddenly, I and a lot of my other friends people who were studying with me were like left with no jobs, because you were suddenly from a 7-figure salary, you're now thinking about what to do next, right? And luckily for me, there was a competition that I participated called Imagine Cup. This was late 2001. I just happened to chance just read it on my college notice board, and I said, okay, let me give it a shot. And there were multiple rounds. It was Microsoft was trying to encourage students to use their .NET platform, which they had recently created. So I actually happened to win all the India rounds. Was the India winner, and represented India at the international level. And my 15 seconds of fame was that I actually have a photograph with Bill Gates, where he's handing me a trophy for at the international level. So if let's say I would have the decision would not have happened, probably I might not have considered participating in Magic Cup. So things, and after that I joined a startup. I got a great mentor, and then a few years later I joined ThoughtWorks, was leading an open source product there, and then in 2011 started Index, and then last year sold the company to Avalara and have been there. So yeah, so I would say my career didn't turn out that bad, but it would have probably been very different if I would have joined that company, right? Yeah. So that's my story. Now, if so based on whatever I learned from my career, right? And what I'll probably do is talk about some of the principles that helped me go through the recessions. Of course, the first one was in 2001. The second one was in 2008-9, and I think some of that even applies to me in my stage, at this stage of my career, even now, right? So it is useful for me to talk about that. So the first principle I want to discuss is you should think about your career as a marathon, not a sprint. So what you're going through right now, think of it as a small blip, right? Your career would be, for most people, it will be 25 to 40 years long, right? So the next, whatever, 18 months, assume that this takes about 18 months to recover. So think of this as a small blip in your career. You still have a long way to go in your career, right? And like any marathon runner, you should be able to pace your career. Another analogy that from sport that I can think of is cricket, right? All of you who watch cricket might be familiar with Rohit Sharma, right? So the way that he paces his innings, right? If you see the first 50 runs, he would assess the pitch, he would assess the bowler, he would wait for a bad ball, and then probably have a strike rate lower than 70. Right? The next 50 to 100, he'll try to get to a strike rate of 100. And then beyond 100, to get to his 150, 200, you would see him bat at a strike rate of 250, right? So if you think of your career right now, think of you're trying to assess the situation. You've been given some pretty good balls, so probably duck and don't worry too much on the strike rate. You can definitely cover up later, right? And the way to look at it is, you can structure your career into multiple, let's say, 5-year or 10-year phases. I mean, that's up to you. So, for example, in your 20s, now when you're graduating, this is the right time to try different things, fail at them, find your calling. Of course, it's easier said than done, but this is the best time to experiment. And I'll also talk later, what kind of things you can do in the next few months to, what do I mean by trying different things and finding your calling. And then after in your 30s, you now figured out what you want to do. So you want to excel in that area. You want to build a personal brand. So I mean, those are the things that you would focus in your 30s. And then later on, in 40s, you might become an expert in. I mean, I'm still in my late 30s, so I don't know what will happen in 40s. That's still something that I'm discovering, right? Yeah, but the principle that I want to talk about here is that your career is a marathon, not a sprint. So a few blips are fine, right? So don't get too bothered about it.
So, Rajesh, very related to this, I had a viewer question. I think this might be the right time to ask it. So, if you're thinking about career as a marathon, not a sprint and such, right? So, one of the questions that a student at me is, should I take up a job or role that I don't really like for the time being, or spend the time learning skills and courses, right? And also something very similar that was also asked by another person is, should I take internships right now? Um and very similar, like even if it's something in an area or role that I'm not fully interested in, or should I learn skills that I'm actually interested in? I think that this question sort of makes sense in the context of what you're saying around the marathon and sprint. Would you like to address this, like and a bit adding a bit of context from myself, would taking up roles or working on something for a couple of years right now affect my future career in any way?
Yeah. So, if I were, if I were to go back and advise my 20-year self, right, I would say, focus on learning things and getting new experience in early part of your career. Don't go after money. Don't chase money. Don't chase brand names. My suggestion would be, focus on a role where you're able to learn a lot, where you're able to work with people who are ready to mentor, who care about you, right? Rather than being in a place where you're one of the 1,000 people where who's supposed to do a certain job, and you might not feel that you're growing, right? So it is. This is the time to try different things. About whether I should join a company or whether I should learn things on my own. I think joining the right company definitely still makes sense. Figure out what is your role. What will you be able to do? Will you be able to get to do what your responsibility looks like? Is it about fixing some minor things, or would you be able to own certain things and push that stuff to production, or work with work on some critical things? I mean, that is something that you need to answer. If that's not going to happen, then you know. You can think of learning on your own. But having said that, there's nothing like getting practice, even in a job, let's say where you're not learning a lot, right? On the technical side, I mean, there are other skills that you can pick up, if that's important to you, right? So I mean, it's not a one size fits all. You have to take a call on what that job involves. And as far as the learning skills goes on your own, I think that would need. You need to figure out what exactly do you want to do, right? And you need some guidance, somebody, probably a role model or a mentor or your seniors, whom could guide you on what are the skills that you need to pick up, right? So and one way to do that is through some networking. So you can reach out to your college seniors, somebody who spend time in hostel, reach out to them, and this is not the time to ask them for a job. Ask them, what is it that you learned? Empathize with them first. They might also be going through something like this in their career. Then ask them, okay, what is it that you learned in college that is helping you right now? Or what is it that you did not learn in college that you think I should pick up? So probably, that will allow you to figure out, okay, these are the skills that I need to work on right now in the next few months to get better at my career.
Yeah, just to add on to this with my own experience, I think when I started my career, I started with more into ops and DevOps side of things. And at that point in time, I was not fully into it, and I felt like I was being pushed into a wrong area. But I wanted to give it a shot, and I've been told, and I think I can say it so myself, that I gave it all and did very well. And to this day, I think it's been very helpful for me. I think a lot of things that I learned into things that I felt like was not really something I should be doing now as more into general software engineering and machine learning. Still, the initial work that I did around ops and DevOps do that base does helps me even now. And I think still DevOps is something that I still have a good affection for. I think sometimes things that you feel like you might not be interested in it might actually turn up helping you learn a lot, or also might become your most favorite thing as well in the future.
Right. And you don't need to plan your career like a chock block. Okay, this is what I do in year one, this is what I do in year five. I mean, you can think about the long term, but you should also leave time for serendipity. Talking about my experience, it's like I spoke about Imagine Cup, right? So the person who started Imagine Cup, his name is Sanjay Parthasarathy. He was the person who set up Microsoft in India. So I didn't know him then when I won the cup. But exactly 10 years later, he had quit Microsoft and he had moved to India, and he was looking for somebody to start the company with him on the engineering side. And because of the history that we had 10 years back, he reached out to me, and then we connected, and I really liked the idea, and I joined. So I was not, that was not something that I had planned. I was pretty happy at ThoughtWorks, working on a product, being a tech lead for it and growing it. And I was thinking that I'll probably continue there, but it was through luck or serendipity or whatever you call it. I got this opportunity, and I said, okay, this is probably the right thing for my career, and I took that opportunity. Right. So this brings to my next point, the next principle. So the first principle, just to recap, was think of your career as a marathon, not a sprint. The next thing I want to talk about is think of your a little slope in your career beats your Y-Intercept. This is what do I mean by that? It might be hard to visualize without having a slide or a diagram in front of you, but let me give it a shot. So assume, think of your career as a 2D graph, right? So if your x-axis is the time and your y-axis is something good or something that you want to achieve in the career, it could be money, it could be fame, it could be impact, whatever you want to achieve, right? That's up to you. Now, at this moment, there might be somebody who got a better job, who's got a better pay, got into a good company, great, right? So they'll start at a higher Y-intercept. Their Y-intercept will be higher at this point, and you might be starting, lower than them. It could be on money, or it could be on fame, or whatever it is, right? So now, let's say if their slope is certain. I mean, they have a certain slope of growing in their career. Now, what you can control is, of course, your slope. So if you have two lines, right, the line that has a higher slope, irrespective of when it started on the Y-intercept, will always overtake in finite time, right? So my advice in this case would be, so it's okay if you didn't get the job you wanted right now. You didn't get into your dream company. It's perfectly fine, as long as you're able to keep up your slope, or figure out, okay, what do I need to do to keep up my slope? You will definitely be able to do well. And it's not a competition. I mean, every time you might think that, okay, I mean, let me do better than that person, but there'll always be somebody else you want to emulate, right? So focus on yourself, focus on what you want to do. Always try to increase, keep increasing your slope. And we'll talk about what are some of the things that you need to do to increase your slope later on, right? So yeah, so this was the second principle. Again, recap: little extra slope definitely beats the Y-intercept. The third principle that I want to talk about, and this is something that I learned from the CEO of my first company, and this goes into physics, is you should try to achieve escape velocity in your career. Now you must be wondering, what does escape velocity have to do with the career, right? So before I go into that, let me just recap. What do I mean by escape velocity? This is something that you would have read in our college, in our schools, right? So escape velocity is the minimum velocity that a rocket needs, or any object or projectile needs, so that it can escape the Earth's gravitational pull and is able to orbit on its own, right? Now, why is that important? And why is that important from a career standpoint? So there are things like gravity, analogous to gravity that pull you down in your career. For example, a recession like this, what's going on with the economy, COVID, and you will definitely see multiple such recessions. Given our experience, like Manoj has seen a couple of them, I have seen 3, right? So you would definitely go through such phases in your career. That is something that all of us will. I mean, that's a given, right? So you need to make sure that you are above the gravity pulls like that. You could also be in a role or job just because of bad luck, which becomes redundant in these situations, right? So in that case, what do you need? I mean, you need thrust. For example, general misconception in escape velocity is that a rocket needs all the thrust in the beginning itself to get out of the orbit, right? You can actually have, but it turns out that you can have thrust at different times, so that the thrust is just enough so that the rocket pulls out of the gravity, right? So similarly, the analogy here is that you also need certain thrusts in your career, which will give you that escape velocity. And once you have that escape velocity, you become employable, where instead of you looking for jobs, companies will come, looking for you to join them. You'll also be able to, pull through this gravity. And now, what are those thrusts, right? Some examples that I can think of: learning relevant skills. So what are some of the skills during this time that are relevant? So if you look at the industries that are doing pretty well, right? So one thing I can definitely see is that there will be a lot of stress in automation. So companies that have a huge army of people who are trying to do repeatable jobs manually, they will be replaced with automation. They'll be replaced with tools, that use, let's say, AI/ML or automation to do that job. So learning some of those skills is definitely useful. I mean, I'm just giving an example of those skills. I mean, those skills, as I said, you can do your own research, figure out your role models on networking, and get those. The other thing that will also give you thrust is getting the right mentors. I have been fortunate enough to get multiple mentors in different parts of different times in my career, who gave me that necessary push, right? And networking also helps you, because you never know when you would need somebody's help in your career. So always keep in touch with your friends and people you work with or study with, right? And sometimes you might also get that thrust by thinking, taking a bigger leap, thinking of a job change or a role change or a career change. Those are I mean, you need a different mindset for that. But definitely, if you're not feeling happy with what you're doing, it's possibly look at expand the horizon and see if you can even think about a bigger career change, right? So yeah, so these are the three principles that I used in my career to get to where I am. So your career is a marathon. Always focus on slope. Higher slope is better than higher Y-intercept, and try to achieve escape velocity in your career.
Yeah, one relevant question that I wanted to ask around this is, should people look at starting a company at this point in time? Is that enough of trust, or is
Right.
that too much of a risk?
Yeah. So that's a good question, actually. So you can definitely start a company in a recession, right? There companies that started during the recession. Airbnb started during the 2008 recession. So you can, this is a good time to think about ideas. This is a good time to figure out what your business model would be. Whether this is a good time to act on it, that I'm not sure. I mean, by that what I mean is, you can't go and get to the, you can't get and figure out the market at this point of time. This is not the time where companies will say, okay, yes, I want to try this new thing, or investors would say, okay, let me fund this, right? So that might be an issue, but there is no reason why you can't figure out a problem, think of a problem, build a quick prototype, and let's say try it out 6 months or 12 months down the line, and so that you're then set up to start the company, right?
Okay, so let me. I think some of the questions have been answered as well, in part at least. Let me move on to some of the viewer questions that I've collected. I think this one is from pre-final year student. So, what can we expect from the campus placement side of things for this year? I think we are heading towards campus placement season soon. So, what can we expect on that? Or how to prepare for it? Is it going to be very similar advice, something different?
Yeah. So firstly, whether companies would come for campus placement this year or not, it's a given that the number of companies that could come for campus placement this year compared to last year would be on the lower side. Now, I mean, how do you? I mean, so I think that's the first one. Especially for example, we are also still thinking, Avalara. We are thinking of when is a good time to go for campus. We are in touch. We're still trying to figure out from the leadership, getting some advice on them and what the numbers look like, so that we can go for the July hiring in NITs and other colleges. So advice for pre-final year students, who have their job placement coming up, right? My advice for you would be that the bar to hire would definitely increase, right? So earlier, let's say a company would come and hire 100 people, right? Now they might actually hire only 10 people. So about 100 people are now vying for the same 10 positions, right? So in that case, you need to definitely up your skills, which means understand what the companies are asking for. You have to definitely do a better job than what you would have otherwise done, right? So go back and brush up your fundamentals. Create, build your own portfolio, right? So this is a good time to go and showcase your talents. Build, use GitHub as a way to showcase your skills. Build some stuff. Probably use YouTube or build a website that that showcases what you've done. I think that's definitely something that you can do. I mean, you would have some time, a few months to get to do that. In addition to that, this is a great time to learn. We have education has become really democratized, and online learning is companies are doing pretty well. So there's with that you can actually use a lot of resources to learn online and focus on the entire experience. Not just okay, I just go through this course and then get done with it. Go through the videos. Go through the whole experience. Go through the assignments. Get a grade. Go through peer learning, and also build a project at the end of it. So my suggestion would be, use this time to learn. There are enough opportunities available. Make good use of them.
Yeah, it's a good time to learn, but that leads to the next question, which is also interesting. So, should or shouldn't students look to pursue higher studies like MS, especially MS abroad?
Right.
I think there are a lot of aspects to it. I think this alone can be discussed for a day,
Sure.
especially with education becoming like remote now, and some of the universities like waiving GREs in some cases, reducing the fees or whatever, right? So there is that side of things, and if I'm going to be remote, should I even pursue it? Should I learn go into higher studies, or should I look for a job? Should I learn on my own? I think those are the different aspects of this question.
Yeah, I think Manoj, I mean, you might be in a better position to answer that question because I never went for my MS or never tried for MS. But what I can, I've definitely written recommendations for multiple people I've mentored, and as early as this year, somebody I mentored, and gave a recommendation for her. She got through 3 universities. And she was supposed to join in fall, but the challenge that she's having right now is that none of those universities are ready to open, right? So she might either go for the spring or the next fall. So one thing that I'm definitely seeing is that the universities will not. It's not going to be easy to go abroad and join the universities in this time. So that is for sure. To the second question, are universities uh, enabling online um, uh, online MS degrees? I mean that I'm not so sure about it. I've not heard about it, but definitely it's worth trying that out. But the other reason why you would do an MS abroad would be to do network. I mean to get some networking, because that's those are folks who want to do something with their career. So getting to know them would definitely a greater advantage in your career. And the second thing is to also gain new experiences in a different country. Experience that, I mean, that definitely would help you. That multidimensional experience would help you in your career. So those two things you might not be able to get in probably the networking you might still be able to get, but the experience you might not be able to get through a remote MS.
Yeah, to add my perspective, right? I think I was faced with the same question when I was coming out of college in 2009, and at that point in time, I decided not to pursue my MS admits that I had. Mainly, I think due to the recession and due to the financial constraints that I had. I think I regretted it for a few years at least, and was very worried. And I think, but now I can safely say I don't think I really missed out on a lot, or I was able to make up for it. I think so. If the current situation has made a change such that you were planning to do it and cannot do it anymore, or don't want to do it anymore, I think there is still hope. There is definitely hope if you put in the effort into it. It need not be the end of it. And like Rajesh has highlighted a lot, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And this is just 100-meter race that's gone. But I think there is a lot remaining as well.
Yeah, and MS might will give you a thrust definitely. But there are other ways of getting that thrust, right. You could join a company where you're able to learn pretty quickly, right? I remember somebody I mentored, she wanted to do MS pretty badly, but but after spending a year working with me and with my team, she realized that she's able to learn a lot more and was able to try a lot of things. Post that, she decided that, okay, I don't need to do MS. So
Okay, another viewer question is what about non-CS background students or non-CS engineering students, like those who are getting BCA degrees, right? So what should they do? Should they do anything different from what you've spoken? I think a lot of the stuff around developing the right skills and even things around communication skills, etc., makes sense. Is there anything else that they should focus on to enter the software industry specifically?
yes, so I think as I mentioned earlier, right, the competition for each role and job is going to now increase because, as I said, the companies have reduced the number of, would be reducing the number of people they'll be hiring. So people with, non-CS degrees would definitely be at a disadvantage because they might not be aware of a lot of the fundamentals. So the first thing would be that, you should be able to learn all the fundamentals around algorithms, data structures, or what are the important things that get asked in any CS interview, right? Any company that does interviews for CS. So that's definitely something that you should try, you should learn, and also practice what you've learned. Right? So there are multiple forums now, which is something that we didn't have when we graduated. You could go and go to Code Forces, uh, Hacker Rank, and try out be what people call the competitive coder nowadays, which is definitely one way to showcase your uh, expertise in writing good quality code, which also performs well, right? So that is definitely something that you should do. And also, as I said, try to build your portfolio. One of the things that I look for in people is a good breadth, but also depth in what they've done. So if you're non-CS and you have, if you've done a good project in your area of work and you're able to demonstrate definite depth in that, then what that will mean is that somebody like me is convinced that okay, this person is ready, has the passion to go deep in whatever they like, right? So I'll be able, you'll get a leg upper leg over somebody else, right? So that's on the technical side. On the non-technical side or the soft skill side, I would say there are two things that I am seeing that are important right now, right? Given that all of us are going to work remotely, so a good handle on writing, communicating, written communication is going to be very important. Ability to articulate what you're able to do in a written format, as well as able to talk in videos through video communication. I think that is definitely going to be important, and all of you should try to brush up some of those skills. The other skill that is important is ability to take a big problem and then chunk it down into small problems and prioritize and then focus on it, right? So that skill is also something that and again that's nothing to do with decision or non decision, right? That's a general skill that you should expect from people from a non which is a soft skills perspective.
I think we have done with all the questions, and as a concluding thought, what I wanted to add, speaking with you and realizing is that I feel it's a duty for me to make sure that I am making myself available for people to reach out for any help or anything that they want to know, and I think that will be the same case for you as well, Rajesh. So I think we commit ourselves to make sure that we are available. I'll share our LinkedIn profiles or any other social media platform where you can reach us. So either we'll try to help anyone who's trying to navigate these uncertain times as to the best of our abilities, and also or connect you with any others that we could reach out to. Anything else you would like to add, Rajesh, on that?
No, I think you summarized it pretty well, and like I'm also ready to put in my time to help folks. And just just a final thought. As I said, accept the reality. Work on things that you can control. And as I said, the career is a marathon. So you'll go through these phases, and all of us will. Only thing is, we'll learn from this, right? So, and that is definitely something that will help us in our career.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Rajesh. Thanks a lot for taking the time to address this very important topic. I think it's a very timely topic and something that should be addressed. And I'm happy and proud that I'm able to provide a platform for you to address it again after you talk with your alumni, right? So, so thanks a lot, and bye.
See you. Yeah, thank you. Bye bye.